My holy sisters and brothers, a good gebenched yor to you. That's Yiddish for may you have a blessed year, as well as a good vach, a good week. We're coming out of Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah. Wow, I am flying. We had such a beautiful, beautiful Rosh Hashanah here in our community, in our shul. And a little teaching that we came out of Rosh Hashanah with from Rabbi Shochet, who's our rabbi, Rabbi Kalmanson's brother-in-law. And so he says, basically in a nutshell, that the main, well, first of all, there's a standard teaching, an old teaching, an important teaching, that all Jews, and really all people, should view themselves as somewhere in the middle. Right, so somewhere in the middle, meaning not a totally righteous person, not a totally wicked person. We're all somewhere in the middle. And who knows but whether all of our meritorious deeds and all of our transgressions are evenly balanced. And the next mitzvah, right? The next deed that you do, the next commandment that you follow, the next goodness that you provide to others will be the one that tips the scales in your favor. Now, that's always important, but how much more so during these 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So every mitzvah is important. In fact, every mitzvah may be the mitzvah that puts us over the edge to receive a good decree for the coming year. But not only that, maybe the whole world is balanced evenly, and all the people in the world, their good deeds and their transgressions are evenly balanced, and your next good deed could put the whole world over the edge onto the positive side of the scale and bring God's favor into the world for us for the coming year. Now, that teaching has always been there. It's one we should always remember, and especially during the 10 days. But says Rambam that the most important of the mitzvahs that you can do during these 10 days, not surprisingly, is teshuvah, atonement. And why is atonement so important? So Rabbi Shochet explained that this is like a story that we encountered when we were in Tractate Yoma, the laws of Yom Kippur. And there was a story where Rava had some kind of an interaction with a butcher, where the butcher did him wrong. The butcher, I don't know what he did, but he did wrong by Rava. The butcher was clearly at fault, and he did something wrong. And Rava, who is such a prominent sage and certainly didn't need to do this, but he wanted to give this butcher, who might be shy, who might not realize what his obligations are, who might still be steaming and think that he's in the right when in fact he's in the wrong. So Rava went to the butcher. He's not going to go so far as to say to the butcher, hey, do you have something to say to me? But he walked in front of the butcher, not once, not twice, but 3 times, to make himself available to the butcher so that the butcher could say, please forgive me what I did wrong to you in the past year. So the butcher did not seize the opportunity. And in the heavenly court, they viewed this as a bigger transgression than the original transgression. Now, Rabbi Shochet told this story to illustrate this idea that right now, during the 10 days of awe between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, God is sort of coming to us. He's not gonna say, hey, do you have something to say to me? But he's very near, very accessible, very available. And what he wants is that we should acknowledge our shortcomings and say, God, I'm so sorry. I fell short so many times. I fell short like this and I fell short like that. I wasn't productive. I wasted time. I was mean. I was impatient. I did it with you. I did it with others. And I have to apologize to others for what I said or did to them. But to you, God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And God is so embracing and accepting and forgiving when we do that. And what an opportunity lost if we don't. So take advantage during these 10 days. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house on a Sunday night coming out of Rosh Hashanah? Paul in the Great Northwest, Nancy in North Carolina, Ryan. Reminding everybody that tomorrow we fast, the fast of Gedalia, minor fast. If you get up before sunrise, you can have breakfast, but during the daylight, we fast. The killing of Gedalia actually happened on Rosh Hashanah. We don't fast on Rosh Hashanah, so that's tomorrow's fast. Thank you, Ryan. Paula says, happy birthday, Bill. Thank you. And I'll just key off that. Is Bill in the house? Is Bill in the house? Yes, he is. Hey, Bill. Bill is sponsoring our class tonight on his birthday. Happy birthday, Bill. May you have such a sweet year, your best year yet. Says Bill, I'm dedicating an episode of AT Daily for my birthday. On September 17th, I turned 33 years old. In the Christian tradition to which I belong, 33 is considered a particularly auspicious year for spiritual development in some teachings. Actually, the years 30 through 33 all are, but 33 is the capstone. I cannot say I have not grown spiritually in the last 3 years, and not all of it was pleasant, but it was all to the good of my soul and to the glory of God. Now I'm starting my second master's degree, this one in library science with an emphasis on congregational libraries for my projects and the new role as the student chaplain of my campus ministry. So I want to kick 33 off right by sponsoring a little learning with AT Daily. May God continue to bless the entire AT community, which is so very near and dear to my heart. Amen. And Bill, you are so near and dear to our heart. May you be showered in blessings, you and all your loved ones. May you grow exponentially in your learning and your impact, your joy, your calm, your patience, your ability to be the clergyman that you want to be to your congregation. And to also grow in totally unexpected ways beyond even your ample imagination. And we say amen. Thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. Also, who else is in the house? David in Indiana, Nancy in Tennessee, Melissa in Great Neck, Bella in Florida, Shandora says Hag Sameach, Margaret in Pennsylvania, Sharon wishing everyone a Gemar Hasima Tova, a good decree inscribed and sealed. There's Bill. And people enjoying the comment. Welcome everybody and wishing blessings to Bill. Also, Marjorie says shalom. Being unplugged from TV, radio, computer, phone, and electric lights this weekend was a revelation. It was hard not to journal, but worth it. Also, Spencer in Connecticut. Welcome everybody. Let's do some learning. Start the year off right. Our daf is page 34 here in Tractate Kiddushin, the 20th volume of the Talmud, continuing our discussion of Mishnah number 8 in chapter 1. We've been talking about the obligations of a father to a son and a son to a father, but the Mishnah also talks about distinguishing the obligations that a mother would have versus a father toward their son or daughter, so making some distinctions between the obligations of men and women, and we'll continue with that discussion today. Now, the Mishnah teaches that women are exempt from all positive time-bound mitzvahs, right? So positive means something that you are obligated to do, as opposed to a negative commandment, something you're obligated to not do. And time-bound means that it's on, it has a time. There's a time to do it, as opposed to something that you choose whenever you want to do it. There's some things have to happen in their time. So women are not obligated. It's still commendable if they do it, but they're not obligated in time-bound positive mitzvahs. And we've started talking about this before. One of the reasons being that perhaps women, primary caregivers for children, especially in the ancient world, don't have control of their schedule. And so they're not obligated in stuff that, has to be on a schedule. That's one explanation. It's not authoritative or conclusive at all. Another explanation, because that wouldn't apply to women that don't have children in the house to take care of. So another explanation is women are naturally on a higher spiritual plane. They were actually the last, thing created by God. So, God sort of practiced creating humans, as it were, with men and got better at it and then created women. So maybe women are already on a little bit higher spiritual plane. That's another explanation. But we're going to get a little bit more into the nuance and detail of this idea. Right? So the Mishnah said that women are exempt from all positive time-bound mitzvahs. The sages taught, what is a positive time-bound mitzvah? Examples include residing in a sukkah during the holiday of Sukkot, which is coming up in a couple weeks, and taking the lulav, which we also do on Sukkot, and blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, very timely, all of which can be performed only at specific times of the year. And another example is donning tzitzis, ritual fringes, as the mitzvah applies only during the daytime, due to the verse which states, tzitzis, that you may look upon them, indicating that the fringes should be seen. Since it has to be done every day during the daytime, it's a time-bound positive mitzvah. And wrapping tefillin, which are the leather straps and the boxes that a Jewish man has to put on every morning. Women are not obligated. Why? Because they are worn at night. They are not worn at night, nor on Shabbos and festivals, but they are every other day, so time-bound positive mitzvah. And what is a positive mitzvah? Something you have to do, but that it is not time-bound. So examples include the affixing of a mezuzah on the doorpost of your house, the construction of a parapet, a guardrail on a roof, returning a lost item, and the release of the mother bird from the nest, i.e. the mitzvah of sending away a mother bird when one finds her sitting on chicks or eggs, which you are going to take. The Gemara asks, but is this really an established principle? But there are the mitzvahs of eating matzah on the first night of Passover, that is a time-bound positive mitzvah, and women are obligated to do that, and of rejoicing on a festival, and assembly on Sukkot following the sabbatical year. Assembly, the hakel, is that every 7 years, like all the people were obligated to show up in Jerusalem, right? You're always supposed to go up to Jerusalem, but not everyone can make it. Not everyone can make it all 3 festivals. Some people don't make it at all in a particular year. But every 7 years, it's a big mitzvah for the whole nation to gather in Jerusalem. And at that point, the king will read from the Torah to the people. So that's the mitzvah of assembly, time-bound, positive mitzvah. And the Torah says all the men and women and children will gather. So women are included in a time-bound positive mitzvah. And so each of these is a positive time-bound mitzvah, and yet women are obligated in them. And furthermore, one can raise a difficulty as follows. But there are the mitzvahs of Torah study, procreation, and redemption of the firstborn, each of which is not a positive time-bound mitzvah, and yet women are exempt from them. I mean, they are I guess you could say that these are positive mitzvahs that are not time-bound, and yet women are exempt from them. The principle seems to say that if it's positive and not time-bound, women would be obligated, and here's some that women are not obligated in, whereas there were some other mitzvahs that are positive and time-bound, which would seem to indicate women wouldn't be obligated in them, and yet there are some mitzvahs that women are obligated in. So why all these exceptions? How can we learn out a principle that seemingly has so many exceptions? So Rabbi Yochanan says one does not learn practical laws from general statements, i.e., when a general statement appears in a Mishnah and uses the term all, it is not to be understood as an all-inclusive statement without exceptions. And this is the case even in a place where it says except to exclude a specific matter, right? The Gemara is now going to prove that when it says, like in our Mishnah said, that it said that women are exempt from all positive time-bound mitzvahs. This was actually a general statement, and it is mostly true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there are no exceptions. And if a Mishnah lists exceptions, it is not to be understood that that list of exceptions is a complete list of exceptions. So a proof for this is, as we learned in a Mishnah, Tractate Eruvin 26b. One can establish a joining of houses in courtyards, called an Erev Hatzeros, and the joining of Shabbos boundaries, called an Erev Techumin. And similarly, one can merge courtyards to permit carrying in a joint alleyway on Shabbos. We learned this back in Tractate Eruvin, but this idea that on Shabbos you can't carry items from a private domain to a public domain, you can't carry items from a public domain to a private domain, and you cannot carry items in a public domain more than 4 cubits unless you make these kinds of arrangements where you locate some food in one house that is one of several houses that share a courtyard, and now it's like you've made one large private property out of all those courtyards, so you can carry between them, or you can have an eruv, in a part of a city, which you define, but usually by fishing line and natural barriers and things like that. And so we can carry in our neighborhood on Shabbos because it's like, legally speaking, it's a legal device, like we're just carrying within our own property. Or you can only walk 2,000 cubits beyond the border of your city on Shabbos. But if you locate some food, enough for a couple meals on Shabbos, kind of beyond that boundary, you can move the center of this circle of 2,000 cubits radius in the direction where you want to walk to during that Shabbos, so that you can walk more than 2,000 cubits. You can go to your friend's house who lives 3,000 cubits away if you locate, this meal in between. So the point of that law that is being brought up here is what kinds of foods can be used to create the Erev. Right, so what kind of food? So this can be done with all types of food except for water and salt. And this is stated as a law with specific exceptions. And yet, one can ask, is there nothing else that it is not permitted to be used for an Erev? But there are truffles and mushrooms, which also cannot be used for an Erev, which we learn elsewhere, but because they do not offer nourishment, but they're not included in this list of exceptions. All foods can be used except water and salt. But it turns out there's other foods that cannot be used also. Does that mean that the original Mishnah was wrong? No. It's just that it was a general statement that helps you understand the principle, but it doesn't mean that neither the all foods nor the list of exceptions is an absolute categorical truth. It's just a principle that will generally apply. And we can't use that principle to rule out other, rules or exceptions. Now, the Gemara turns to the sources of the principle that women are exempt from all time-bound positive mitzvahs. From where do we derive that women are exempt from positive time-bound mitzvahs? It is derived by juxtaposition from the commandment, the mitzvah of tefillin. Just as women are exempt from wrapping tefillin, so too women are exempt from all positive time-bound mitzvahs. And the exemption of women from wrapping tefillin is derived from their exemption from regular Torah study. Just as women are exempt from Torah study, very commendable for women to study Torah, but they're not obligated because we have an obligation to study Torah every day. Time-bound, positive mitzvah. So women are not obligated. So just as women are exempt from Torah study, as derived from Deuteronomy 11:19, which is the second paragraph of the Shema, so too women are exempt from wrapping tefillin, as these two commandments, studying Torah and wrapping tefillin, are juxtaposed next to each other in the first paragraph of the Shema at Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 7 and 8. So the Gemara asks, and let us say the opposite, and juxtapose tefillin to mezuzah, which is also mentioned in that passage. Mezuzah is a mitzvah in which women are obligated. Based on this comparison, women would be obligated in tefillin as well. And the Gemara answers, tefillin is juxtaposed to Torah study in both the first paragraph and the second paragraph of the Shema, whereas tefillin is not juxtaposed to mezuzah in the second paragraph. It is therefore preferable to compare tefillin to Torah study. So the Gemara says, but if so, let us juxtapose mezuzah to Torah study and say that women are also exempt from the obligation of mezuzah. That the Gemara rejects this suggestion. This could not enter your mind, as it is written with regard to the mitzvah of mezuzah. Right, mezuzah is a scroll from the Torah, from an excerpt from the Torah written on a scroll by a scribe. Rolled up, and then we put it in a nice decorative or protective cover on the doorposts of our house, like the front door, but also interior doors to bedrooms and living rooms and dining rooms, not bathrooms, not closets, but all the doorposts of your home. So that's an obligation that both men and women have, is to have that mezuzah. Right? So if so, let us juxtapose mezuzah to Torah study and say that women are also exempt from the obligation of mezuzah. But the Gemara rejects this suggestion. This could not enter your mind, as it is written with regard to the commandment of mezuzah, that your days be multiplied. Deuteronomy 11:21. Now, interestingly, it says that your days be multiplied in the land that I gave to your ancestors for as long as the days of heaven and earth. Right, meaning Israel. So you could read it a little, you could also read it as, do these commandments that are taught in the Shema, or you as a nation will lose the privilege of living in the Holy Land. But you could also truncate that verse and just say, do mezuzah, and you will multiply your days. Right? So can it be said that men need to multiply their days, but women do not need to multiply their days? Of course, both genders need to multiply their days. Everybody wants to live longer. Since the reward for the performance of the mitzvah of mezuzah is extended life, this mitzvah applies to women as well. So the Gemara further asks, and that is an explicit reward that's written out in the Torah. So the Gemara further asks, but there is the mitzvah of residing, dwelling in the sukkah. Right, the sukkah is the little hut that we're going to put up in our driveway. As soon as Yom Kippur ends, right away we start building the sukkah. And then 5 days later, the festival of Sukkot, the week-long festival of Sukkot begins. And during Sukkot, or more Ashkenaz pronunciation, Sukkos, we are commanded to dwell in the sukkah. Everyone who builds a sukkah tries to eat all of their meals and even snacks in the sukkah during that week. And some people, who are really do this mitzvah right, sleep in the sukkah. The whole family sleeps in the sukkah. Not always easy to do. That big commitment. There's a lot of mosquitoes, rain, etc. But it's amazing if you can sleep in the sukkah that whole week. I know some people certainly do. But certainly you want to, if you build a sukkah, have all your meals in it. Okay, now that is a time-bound positive mitzvah, to build a sukkah and to reside in the sukkah during Sukkos. Okay, but there is the mitzvah residing in a sukkah, which is a positive time-bound mitzvah, as it is written in Sukkot, you shall reside 7 days. Leviticus 23:42, referring to 7 specific days of the year. Nevertheless, the reason that women are exempt from this mitzvah is that the merciful one writes in the continuation of the verse. Now, why are they even giving us this, right? Didn't they just say all time-bound positive mitzvahs, women not obligated in it? So don't we already know that from the fact that it's a time-bound positive mitzvah, but they're actually going to offer a different derivation for this particular mitzvah. What we're saying is, why aren't we deriving that women are exempt from time-bound positive mitzvahs? Why are we deriving that from tefillin? Maybe we could derive it from sukkah. But the Torah says this, the reason women are exempt from the mitzvah is commendable, again, not obligated, from this mitzvah is that the merciful one writes in the continuation of that verse, in Sukkot you shall reside 7 days. All the homeborn in Israel shall reside in Sukkot. So the definite article, it could have said all homeborn, right? All people born in Israel. And that's obviously Jews are obligated to reside in the sukkah, whether they were born in Israel, whether they lived in Israel or not. But nevertheless, the way the Torah speaks about this commandment, it sort of adds this idea that all of the natives in Israel, right, all the Jews born in Israel, shall reside in Sukkot. It's kind of an addition, what it already said, that in Sukkot you shall reside 7 days, and then it adds, all the homeborn in Israel shall reside in Sukkot. Now the definite article, it could have said all homeborn in Israel shall reside, but it says all the homeborn in Israel shall reside. And the definite article, is an exclusion. And it serves to exclude the women from the obligation to reside in a sukkah, meaning that not all homeborn are obligated, some are not, some are. Which ones are the ones that are obligated? Males, because it's a time-bound positive mitzvah. So who's left out? Females. This indicates that women do not receive a blanket exemption from every positive time-bound mitzvah. If here there was some kind of additional information given in the Torah that exempts women from this particular time-bound positive mitzvah, so it must be that maybe it's not that women are exempt from all time-bound positive mitzvahs. Maybe they're only exempt from time-bound positive mitzvahs where you can find some source to derive that they're exempt from that one, but not all the rest. So we haven't completed our proof yet. Abaye said, in the case of residing in a sukkah, a special verse was necessary to exempt women. Why? Because otherwise it might enter your mind to say that since it is written, in Sukkot you shall reside, this means that you should reside as you dwell in your permanent home. And just as a man and his wife live together in a residence, so too a man and his wife are obligated to reside together in a sukkah. You might have thought that, and that logical derivation would override the idea of women exempt from time-bound positive mitzvahs, and that's why the Torah offered an additional clue for that particular mitzvah, that women are exempt from it also. And Rava said, now we're on 34b, it is necessary to state this verse for another reason, as it might enter your mind to say, derive a verbal analogy with regard to Sukkot, where the verse states, on the 15th day of this 7th month is the festival of Sukkot, Leviticus 23:34. And you might derive its laws from Passover, where the verse states, and on the 15th day of the same month is the festival of Passover. It says the same month, but it's obviously 6 months away, in the month of Nisan, Leviticus 23:6. So one would, since the word 15th, right, both holidays occur on the 15th, on the full moon of Nisan and Tishrei and Nisan respectively. So one would then say, or one might say, that just as there women are obligated to eat matzah on the first night of Passover, despite the fact that it is a time-bound mitzvah, so too here with regard to the mitzvah of residing in the sukkah, women are obligated. Therefore, it was necessary for the verse to use the term the homeborn to exclude women from the obligation to reside in the sukkah. obviously women are not only welcome, but like they make the sukkah wonderful, but they're not obligated to reside in the sukkah. The Gemara further asks, but there is the mitzvah of appearance, i.e. the obligation to bring a burnt offering on pilgrimage festivals, which is a positive time-bound mitzvah. When the temple is standing in Jerusalem, all the Jews are sent to Jerusalem on Pesach, on Shavuos, on Sukkot, right? And to go there and bring a burnt offering, that is the mitzvah of appearance. That is a positive time-bound mitzvah. And the reason that women are exempt from that obligation is that the Merciful One writes with regard to this particular mitzvah, 3 times in the year, all of your males shall appear before the Lord, your God, before the Lord God. Exodus 23:17, which serves to exclude women. So, if women are exempt from all time-bound positive mitzvahs, why, when the Torah lists a time-bound positive mitzvah like this one, does it specifically exclude women from being obligated in it? That might seem to indicate that we don't have a general principle to exclude, to exempt women from time-bound positive commandments. So it may be derived from here that if that were not so, women would be obligated, as I just said. So the Gemara answers, it was necessary for the verse about appearance to teach the law in this case as well, right? The Torah had to be specific about exempting women from the mitzvah of appearance. Why? Because it might enter your mind to say, derive a verbal analogy with regard to appearance, where the verse states, 3 times in the year, all of your males shall appear. From the appearance stated with regard to the mitzvah of assembly, about which the verse states, when all Israel come to appear before the Lord your God, right? So 3 times a year, every year, the males are commanded to go and appear for the festivals, and once every 7 years, all of Israel, there the women and children are included. But since the word appearance is used in both places, appear and appearance, one would then say that just as women are obligated in the midst of assembly, so too they should be obligated to appear on a pilgrimage festival. So it was therefore necessary for the Torah to state explicitly that women are exempt from the mitzvah of appearance on a pilgrimage festival. Now, with regard to the primary proof for the principle that women are exempt from positive time-bound mitzvahs, the Gemara asks, but before deriving this law that women are exempt from time-bound positive mitzvahs, before we derive that from tefillin, maybe we should derive it from the mitzvah of rejoicing on a festival in which women are obligated. And so perhaps we should obligate women in all time-bound positive mitzvahs rather than exempt them. So Abaye said the mitzvah of rejoicing does not apply directly to women. Rather, a woman is rendered joyful by her husband, meaning the husband is obligated to go up on the pilgrimage festival, and he can and maybe should bring his wife with him, and she should rejoice in the festival with him, but it's not her, she's not commanded to rejoice. He's commanded to show her a good time. He's commanded to enable her to rejoice. The Gemara asks, what can be said with regard to a widow? She doesn't have a husband. She no longer has a husband who would then be commanded to make her happy on the festival. But she is nevertheless obligated to be joyful on a festival, as it is written, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and the widow. Well, it sounds like widows are obligated. And it's not that the man is obligated in the joy of the widow. She's obligated. And the Gemara answers that the mitzvah does not apply directly to a widow. Rather, it applies to the men in general. It's not only her husband, right? And this might be a nice source for the idea that, a woman loses her husband, or likewise a husband loses his wife, like the community should step in and take care of the widow or the widower. And likewise here in this particular mitzvah, the men of the community have responsibility for that widow. So she no longer has a husband who is charged with her joy. So the rest of the men in the community are obligated to step in and take care of that. And what does rejoicing mean? That she is able to get to Jerusalem if she wants to, and she's able to have wine and meat and the other things that we do to rejoice before the Lord. And the Gemara asks, but why not derive that women are obligated in all positive, time-bound mitzvahs, not from the mitzvah of tefillin, but rather from the mitzvah of assembly. Right? Every 7 years, we all gather to hear the king read from the Torah, and which women are explicitly obligated, despite the fact that it is a time-bound mitzvah. Why don't we derive the opposite principle? Since assembly is a time-bound positive mitzvah that explicitly includes women, why don't we say, and therefore we learn from that women are obligated in all time-bound positive mitzvahs, with a few exceptions? Why don't we state the principle that way? And the Gemara answers, one cannot derive in this manner because the verses concerning the obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Passover and the commandment to assemble every 7 years for the chakel, these are two verses that come as one, i.e., to teach the same matter, that women are obligated in these time-bound positive mitzvahs, but not others. In other words, because the Torah specifically says women are obligated in these particular two time-bound positive mitzvahs, that actually teaches that they're not obligated in the rest of time-bound positive mitzvahs. We have a principle that any two verses that come as one do not teach a precedent that applies to other cases. Rather, the two instances are considered exceptions. So the Gemara asks, if so, the verses concerning tefillin and appearance are also two verses that come as one, as they both indicate that women are exempt from time-bound positive mitzvahs, and therefore the verses do not teach a precedent. So why are we making any precedent at all? Maybe we can't say that women are obligated in all time-bound positive mitzvahs with some exceptions, nor can we say women are exempt from all time-bound positive mitzvahs with some exceptions. Maybe we just say, okay, in these cases they're obligated, and in these cases they're exempt. Why are we making any general principles at all? And the Gemara answers, these two verses about tefillin and appearance, these are not considered two verses that come as one, as both are necessary each for its own reason. As if the merciful one had written that women are exempt from wrapping tefillin and had not written that they are exempt from the mitzvah of appearance, I would say derive a verbal analogy to obligate women from the verse stated with regard to appearance from the appearance stated with regard to the mitzvah of assembly. Therefore, it is necessary for the Torah to teach that women are exempt from the mitzvah of appearance. And if the merciful one had written that women are exempt from the appearance at festivals and had not written that they are exempt from wrapping tefillin, I would say I will compare tefillin to mezuzah, which would mean that women are obligated in the mitzvah of tefillin. Therefore, it is necessary to state the law for both tefillin and appearance, and they are not two verses that come as one. The Gemara asks, if so, the verses concerning matzah and assembly are also necessary each for its own reason, and they are not two verses that come as one either. And the Gemara rejects this suggestion. For what purpose are both of them necessary? Granted, if the merciful one had written that women are obligated in the commandment of assembly, but had not written that they are obligated in eating matzah, I would say derive a verbal analogy with regard to Passover, where the verse states, and on the 15th day, for Passover, from the verse that says on the 15th day of sukkah, teaching that women are exempt from eating matzah just as they are exempt from residing in a sukkah. Therefore, it was necessary for a verse to teach that women are obligated to eat matzah on the first night of Passover. But let the merciful one write that women are obligated in eating matzah, and it would not be necessary to state the same law with regard to assembly. And I would say on my own, if children are obligated in assembly, as it is stated explicitly in the verse, assemble all the people, the men, the women, and the children, Deuteronomy 31:12, that's the mitzvah of assembly. Are women not all the more so obligated? Therefore, as it is explicitly stated that women are obligated in assembly, the verses concerning matzah and assembly are two verses that come as one, and consequently they do not teach a precedent, the general principle. So the Gemara asks, this works out well according to the one who says, as a principle, that two verses that come as one do not teach a precedent. That's the majority view. But what about according to the minority view among the sages? According to the one who says that two verses that come as one do teach a precedent, then what can be said? And furthermore, one can ask, from where do we derive that women are obligated in positive mitzvahs that are not time-bound? And the Gemara answers that one derives this, right, so now we've pretty much established that women are exempt from all time-bound positive mitzvahs. Okay. We had some trouble, but we basically got there. But how do we know that if the mitzvah is positive and not time-bound, like mezuzah, like a fat guardrail around your roof, etc., how do we know that women are obligated in those mitzvahs? From where do we derive that women are obligated in positive mitzvahs that are not time-bound? And the Gemara answers that one derives this from the mitzvah of fearing one's mother and father. Just as women are obligated in the mitzvah of fearing the parents, just as men are, so too, women are obligated in every positive mitzvah that is not time-bound. And the Gemara asks, but why not derive the opposite from Torah study? Just as women are exempt from Torah study, so too they should be exempt from all positive mitzvahs that are not time-bound. And the Gemara answers, one cannot derive an exemption for women from their exemption from Torah study, because Torah study and procreation are two verses that come as one, as in both cases, women are exempt, despite the fact that these are not time-bound mitzvahs, right? The obligation, the mitzvah, the commandment to procreate is a mitzvah incumbent on men. Men are obligated to have children. According to Beis Hillel, you satisfy this mitzvah when a man fathers both a son and a daughter. According to Beis Shammai, he has to have two sons. And the law follows Beis Hillel. Women, obviously, not only commendable, but the species needs us to have children. We can't have children without women. Why are women not obligated to have children? Because childbirth is dangerous. Women have to sign up for that on their own. Right? No one obligates them to have children, especially in the ancient world. A lot of women died in childbirth, so no one obligates a woman to have children, but is obviously more than commendable. Okay, but here we have two examples of positive mitzvahs, a you shall do as opposed to a you shall not, from which women are exempt: Torah study and procreation. And any two verses that come as one do not teach a precedent. We're going to go a little bit of the way into page 35a so that we can catch up tomorrow since we fell a page behind. The Gemara asks, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, who says that with regard to both of them, men and women, the verse states, and God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth and conquer it. What can be said? In other words, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, women are obligated in the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, to reproduce. So according to his opinion, women are exempt from only one positive mitzvah that is not time-bound, and that is Torah study. Why not derive other mitzvahs from this case? And the Gemara answers, the reason this is not a difficulty is because Torah study and the redemption of the firstborn son, from which women are also exempt, are two verses that come as one, and any two verses that come as one do not teach a precedent. Sounds like we now have three verses that come as one, don't we? The Gemara asks, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka as well, let procreation, which he maintains does apply to women, and fear of one's mother and father be considered two verses that come as one, and they should not teach a precedent. And the Gemara answers, both cases are necessary, as if the merciful one had written only that women are obligated in fear of their parents and had not written that they are obligated in procreation. I would say that as the merciful one states, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth and conquer it. This leads to the conclusion that women are exempt from procreation by the following reasoning. It is the manner of men to go to war and conquer. And therefore, he's included in the verse of procreation, which is linked to conquering. But it is not the manner of women to conquer, so therefore she is not obligated in procreation, right? That's not the reasoning we normally use, but that would be an answer to Yochanan ben Baroka, or the one who says, what about according to Yochanan ben Baroka? And if the merciful one had written only that women are obligated in the midst of procreation and had not written that they are obligated to fear their parents, I would say, with regard to a man, as it is in his power to perform this mitzvah, yes, he is obligated to fear his mother and father. But with regard to a woman, as it is not in her power to perform this mitzvah. How is it not in the power of a woman to fear her mother and father? because when she is married, her primary obligations are to her husband. And if there's a conflict between honoring her husband and honoring her parents, she's going to have to, do for her husband first. So she might have to put aside the honor of her parents for the honor of her husband. She doesn't have full control of her time. And as it is not in her power to perform this mitzvah when she is married, perhaps women should not be obligated at all. And there should be no difference between a married and an unmarried woman. Therefore, you might have thought that. Therefore, it is necessary for the Torah to state that women are indeed obligated in fearing the parents and in procreation, as these are not considered two verses that come as one, right? We're in the middle of a proof. We haven't settled this law yet. It is the general principle that women are obligated in positive mitzvahs that are not time-bound, but we're still trying to prove it. And the Gemara notes that the earlier question remains difficult. This works out well according to the one who says that two verses that come as one do not teach a precedent. But according to the minority view who says that two verses that come as one do teach a precedent, then what can be said? According to this opinion, it can be derived that women are obligated in positive time-bound mitzvahs from matzoh and assembly, and that they are exempt from positive mitzvahs that are not time-bound from Torah study and the redemption of the firstborn son. And Rava said, the sages of Pafunya know the reason for this matter. Right? In other words, the Gemara has kept challenging the principle so much that it's like even the sages are saying, this is a little confusing. How exactly do we have a final proof in these two principles? So the Gemara comments, so Rava says, there was the sages of Pafunya. They knew how to prove this. And the Gemara says, and who is the scholar, the single scholar, that they call by the nickname, the sages of Pafunya? Well, this is Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. And he said like this, the verse states, with regard to tefillin, and it shall be a sign for you on your arm, and for a memorial between your eyes, that the Torah of the Lord may be in your mouth. Exodus 13:9. In this manner, the entire Torah is juxtaposed to tefillin. So just as wrapping tefillin is a positive time-bound mitzvah, and women are exempt from it, so too are women exempt from every positive time-bound mitzvah in the Torah. And from the fact that women are exempt from every positive time-bound mitzvah, one can learn by inference that women are obligated in every positive mitzvah that is not time-bound. And the Gemara says, this works out well according to the one who says that the mitzvah of wrapping tefillin is a positive time-bound commandment. But according to the one who says that wrapping tefillin is a positive mitzvah that is not time-bound, how is it not time-bound? We put them on in the morning every day, except for Shabbos and holidays. How is that not time-bound? But according to this minority view, tefillin is applicable the entire year, day and night. We don't do that. But there were some, thousands of years ago, who did. They wore their tefillin all the time. They never took them off. So according to that view, if you subscribe to that view, that tefillin is all the time, well, then it's not time-bound. It's always there. So the Gemara answers, who did you hear who said that wrapping tefillin is a positive mitzvah that is not time-bound? Well, that was Rabbi Meir. And he holds that matzoh and assembly are verses that come as one. And he further maintains that any two verses that come as one do not teach a precedent. So even if you say, according to the minority view, that tefillin is all the time, and therefore maybe women, we can't say that it's a time-bound mitzvah, time-bound positive mitzvah, and we could learn out a principle with respect to women about it. But Rabbi Meir does not question the other part of the proof, that two laws that come together, two verses that teach one law, cannot be used as a precedent for others. So we don't have anyone, who would sort of check all the boxes, which would be necessary in order to discredit the proof that we've so far built. So the Gemara asks, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that two verses that come as one do teach a precedent, and who also says that wrapping tefillin is a positive mitzvah that is not time-bound, then what can be said? Looking for the gotcha. And the Gemara answers, and I'm so close to done. Questions or comments, please get them in. It is not derived from here that women are obligated in positive time-bound commandments, because the verses that mention matzah, rejoicing, and assembly are 3 verses that come as one, and everyone agrees that 3 verses that come as one do not teach a precedent. And we'll knock off there and continue tomorrow, Monday, near the end of the fast, with page 35. And I think since we've already done a good chunk of page 35, we'll probably try to do 35 and 36 and get back on schedule, since we missed a page on Saturday during Rosh Hashanah. Okay, let's take some questions or comments on Kiddushin 34. Bill, happy birthday. Inquiry about the mitzvah of assembly. How did that work in the periods without kings? I can imagine that the Jewish governor, like Gedaliah, to name the most obvious example at the moment, would still do it, even if not an independent king. Likewise, the Herodian ethnarchs. That's a new word for me, thank you. But was assembly simply not practiced before the founding of the monarchy? Or did some other figure, perhaps the Nasi, the head of the Sanhedrin, fill that role before the prophet Samuel, whom we read about his birth during Rosh Hashanah, right, when Hannah prayed and she was given this son Samuel? But before Samuel anointed the first king of Israel, Saul, and later when there was no king, how did they fulfill Hakil? How did they fulfill the mitzvah of assembly? Awesome question. I don't know. I don't have the answer offhand. If you find out, let me know. Sharon, it remains, while I understand the explanation, a mystery how you can command procreation from men without requiring equal obligation on women. It seems that hormonally women have a greater desire for children. Might that be why men must be commanded to fulfill this obligation? That's a great explanation. If we're going to look to logic. And I think you might say the Torah seems to obligate both men and women. Maybe it's rabbinically that they exempt women, and so they would need some kind of a logical explanation, right? And so, I think Sharon is, and I've heard this one before, I think somewhere, but it's a great one. It's not so much, that. Well, it's about time-bound mitzvahs. So let's just say this one. About this mitzvah, right? The explanation given before, because it's dangerous for women, so you don't want to obligate women to do it. Or maybe you just don't need to obligate women to do it because, as Sharon says, hormonally they're much more disposed to want to have children. Like they feel physically the need to have children. Where for men, it can be, a little bit more instinctive or intellectual, and they might get tied up in their own stuff or, create excuses. I'm not ready. I'm not making enough money. I'm not settled down. I'm not this. I'm not that. And so the sages said, listen, this applies to you, right? And by saying women are not obligated, men are, it's like focusing the laser of the rabbinic decree on the men and saying, you need to do this. Don't think that you're just, out here doing your own thing. You are part of a people, and that people needs to move forward into the future, and you're obligated, and God said so, and women would have done it whether God said so or not, as it were. And so that might be a great explanation. Thank you, Sharon. Marjorie. Shalom, I read this comment at the beginning of the class, but I'll repeat it because it's good. So Marjorie said, being unplugged from TV, radio, computer, phone, electric lights this whole weekend, right, because we had Rosh Hashanah, Shabbos, and Sunday, it was a revelation, right? It was hard not to journal, but it was worth it. And I will just say, if you're a Jew and you've never kept a whole Shabbos, maybe you're just kind of like becoming more and more interested. Now you're learning, which is amazing. I mean, like you've earned so much credit by engaging in regular Torah study, by learning with us. Amazing. But you're sort of still working your way toward keeping a Shabbos completely. And maybe like you started going to synagogue, and maybe you started turning off the phone, and maybe you started thinking, I won't drive. But, just commit to do at least one Shabbos with all its details. right? You're not going to turn lights on and off. You're not going to get in the car. You're going to leave that phone off, the cell phone off. You're not going to answer the landline, not switch lights on and off, not turn on any kind of a flame, not cook. You made the food in advance. There's a million guides on how to keep Shabbos on Chabad.org, on Aish.com. Just Google the question, how to keep Shabbos. So if you never fully kept Shabbos, if you just keep one Shabbos, even if you just keep one Shabbos in your life, there's a huge, magnificent difference in a Jew that has never kept a whole Shabbos and a Jew that has kept a whole Shabbos. It would be great if you can keep keeping Shabbos, keep keeping on, right? But if at least you've done one Shabbos completely, fully, properly, you're actually considered by our sages and, in the past and in the present, like in a whole different category. And the merit of that will be a tremendous merit when you leave this world and enter the next world. And that Shabbos itself might, fill you with joy. That's reason enough. But definitely think about it. If you've never fully kept Shabbos, just commit to keep one complete Shabbos. And this coming Shabbos next week, maybe that's the one. All the best, my holy sisters and brothers. I look forward to learning with you again tomorrow, Monday, regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific.